Welcome, ma'am. Welcome to Jubilee.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Hello, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening,
Hearty welcome, ma'am.
ma'am. Good evening, everybody. Good evening over there.
Good evening, ma'am. Welcome.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
happy to have you.
Good evening, ma'am. Yeah.
Shortly within 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Start. Good evening to all. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to the most accomplishing day of our Golden Jubilee webinar series, A Literary Cornucopia. It is so wonderful to have you all here for the ninth webinar session of the series on the topic Critical Disability Theory. This webinar series has turned out to be a feat of strength with your effective involvement and constant support. Let's begin today's program with prayer.
In Christ alone, my hope is found. He is my light, my strength, my song. This cornerstone, this solid ground. Firm through the fiercest drought and storm. What heights of love, what depths of peace. When fears are still, when striving cease, my comforter, my all in all. You.
A reading from the Holy Bible, Old Testament, from Isaiah chapter 66, verses from 12 to 14. For thus says the Lord, I will extend prosperity to her like a river, and the wealth of the nations like an overflowing stream. And you shall nurse and be carried on her arm. As a mother comforts a child, so I will comfort you. You shall be comforted in Jerusalem. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your omnipresence all through the days of webinar series. Nurture our mind and soul on this occasion with your guidance, wisdom, and support at this intellectual forum.
Open your arms and welcome the joy of today. I invite Dr. G. Patricia Alpha Nirmala, Head and Assistant Professor, Department of English, JAC, to welcome the gathering.
Pleasant greetings to all distinguished professors, scholars, and my dear students. First of all, I would like to greet each one of you for celebrating the joy of Golden Jubilee with your active participation in the 3-week webinar series, The Literary Cornucopia. I feel great proud to say that this webinar series organized by the Department of English have chronicled huge success. This virtual attempt created the wider enlightenment in strengthening higher education at all levels. Our experience with attendees of Google Meet, YouTube, and Telegram group has convinced us that it is only through multi-stakeholders and multilateral cooperation that we can truly accelerate progress in higher education. At the verge of webinar series, let me introduce and welcome the speaker of this beautiful evening, Dr. Gurshit Beham, who is a renowned professor from St. Joseph's College, Trichy, and a well-wisher of Jayaraj Annapaikam College. We are going to be marveled at the cornucopia of literary ideas. On behalf of the organizing committee, I accord a warm welcome to you, madam.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
We gratefully remember all the renowned speakers and delegates who spent their valuable time to be a part of this webinar series by enlightening us. We have been really honored to have you all with us for the past 3 weeks. I would also like to offer my respect and gratitude to our principal, Reverend Sister Jaisrani, our secretary, Reverend Sister Quincy, for their blessings and support for conducting meaningful Jubilee celebrations. I record my regards to Coordinator Mrs. Angelin and all the conveners who made this series the academic venture. The themes of the webinar series hugely helped the digital audience in inducing deliberate investigation for the problems which the researchers is sustaining. We believe that the lectures have provided in us the feel of completion in literary cornucopia for a while. Since there is no completion and curtailment in literary pleasure, hope to meet you all soon in the family room of Jubilee Telegram Group for another academic adventure, which has been designed exclusively for bringing up student community. Once again, I would like to express my regards and appreciation to all who made the series a reality and a glorious intellectual jubilee celebration. I welcome you all for the final webinar.
Thank you, ma'am, for your gracious welcome. I am pleased to welcome Mrs. Monica to introduce the speaker.
Good evening to all. I am delighted and fortunate to introduce today's guest speaker, Dr. R. Khurshid Begum, Assistant Professor of English, St. Joseph's College, Trichy, to this forum. Ma'am has 17 years of teaching experience, and her area of interest are African American literature and intersectional studies. She has published 10 research articles and completed a minor research project funded by the UGC. She is now serving as the Additional Dean of IQAC of St. Joseph's College, Trichy, and has contributed much to the development of the institution. During her tenure as the Additional Dean of IQAC, College has attained its 27th rank in NIRF and has been recognized as a mentor institution by UGC under the scheme of Paramash. MAC has instituted the Institutional LMS and Documentation Center, and she has introduced Learn Outcome-Based Curriculum Framework as advocated by the UGC. She has been guiding various institutions in the preparatory process for NAC accreditation. She is a vivid learner, reader, and a sincere, honest, and dedicated professor. She is a good human being whose fervent concern for the people and for the young minds has uplifted and guided both academically and personally the lives of many in all lessons. She said this person talk on the topic critical disability theory that employs an intersectional analysis of experience Dr. R. English to deliver a lecture on critical theory. You, ma'am.
Thank you, Professor Monica, for those warm words of introduction, and also a very hearty thanks to Dr. Patricia, the head of the department, for that pleasant welcome address. A very warm evening to the administrators, Reverend Sister Jay Surani, Reverend Sister Queensley Jayanti, and of course the head of the department who has been steering the department into greater things, and she has shouldered a great responsibility, and the department has started showing itself outside to the outside world. I'm very happy about that. And also Professor Angeline Swarna, coordinator of this webinar series, and a pleasant evening to Ms. Monica and Dr. Immaculate, and also all the professors and the participants, both teaching staff and scholars and students. So today we are going to deal with, to some extent, a new idea, a new theory, a critical disability theory. So we have been looking into a lot of concepts, a lot of ideas. I just went through the invitation, and we began with literary gerontology, kind of working on aging and the creative imagination. And then we moved over to Professor Armstrong's talk on indigenous literature, again a painful subject. And Dr. Joseph Dorera just talk on critiquing the canon, like how to oppose, how to fight against whatever has been given to us as rules, laws, regulations, guidelines, and various other ways of laws and rules. And of course, Father Paul Prakash's another very fierce fight when he was discussing the socio-political relevance of the Marxist concepts. Of course, then posthumanism, John Shaker's talk, and Dr. Melvin's e-colonialism. Like it has been a very pleasant journey, but pleasant but also painful, right? We have been listening to some good things, some happy things, but behind all those things, like there was a lot of pain, a lot of struggle, a lot of fight, a lot of revolutionary ideas and elements. Okay, so it was worth undergoing that pain and getting that spirit. So I was talking to one of the participants who said like she was really motivated by this Marxist ideals, and already this professor was into ideology, and after listening to Dr. Paul Prakash's talk, like more motivated. So that is the kind of effect any webinar or webinar series can produce in the minds of intellectuals, in the minds of thinkers. I'm happy that Dr. Patricia has paved a beautiful path for all the young minds, and of course also older minds like us, okay, in that journey. And now again, like it is kind of feeling a presence of spring, summer, and sometimes autumn, and sometimes winter, like birth, growth, and youth, and all such stuff. Middle age, maturity, and then eventually death. Okay. So here again is a topic, a critical disability theory, which appears to be a topic that focuses on maybe autumn and winter, maybe pain, maturity, old age, and death. But then I find life in this theory, critical disability theory. That is why I chose this theory. So maybe, and it's quite, I think, a coincidence that this talk had been placed at the end. Like I opted for this particular date, and I did not know that this is going to be the last talk of this series. Of course, it's a painful discourse, because it's a very disturbing discourse, but then this creates a kind of idea or a series of ideas in our minds that we are not going to let go of things. We are going to cling on to certain ideals. We are going to fight for certain rights. We're going to be there for certain kinds of people. Okay. So with a short note, I'd like to move over to the ancient past. So whenever we begin something, we always begin with a story long ago, very long ago, like sometimes nobody knows how long ago, like the usual cliche. And let's go, normally a Western title takes us to Greece or Rome. That's how we begin, like we avoid India, we avoid indigenous. We feel bad about whatever is indigenous, whatever is Indian. Even a PhD on Indian literature, is not very much respected. When somebody talks about, Foucault, when somebody talks about an idea like panopticon, people are wonderstruck. But then, when they talk about an Indian element, like people think, oh, okay, it's only Indian, it's only an national literature, Indian literature, nothing of greatness. But today I'm going to talk about a few words about Greece and Rome, but then we are going to come back to India also. In Rome, when children with disabilities are born, so I'll just use the word disability. I'll just explain it to you later. I hope you all know the meaning of the word disability. But we'll come to the technical meaning of the term. When these little, infants, poor infants, puking little, angels are born, when they have a disability, they are immediately killed without any mercy. Or they are, either there were many ways in which they were killed, or sometimes they were thrown into the river Tiber, and they were persecuted. Sometimes they were mutilated to a further extent so that they can beg, okay, when they grew up. I think you might have watched a lot of movies in which both the sides of Rome are presented, all these big mansions, huge buildings, and the other side, the seamy side of Rome, where you have a lot of beggars, mutilated, okay, disabled. So that was happening to children in Rome. And in Greece, okay, the same thing was happening when children with disabilities were born, they were killed. Even Socrates, has said that children are to be mutilated if they are born with a disability. That's how things were happening. And while I was reading this, I was wondering as to how Tamil literature or Tamil history had presented disabilities. And I was talking to a professor from another college. A Tamil professor. He said, like, I told him, I'm reading something about critical disability theories. Is there any reference about critical or other disability and how the people with disabilities are handled in India, or especially in Tamil literature? He said, like, as far as I know, there's not much of reference, ma'am. He said, like, then I wasn't satisfied because I remember reading something about Manimegle and stuff, and even a thing like Ponniyin Selvan, where you have a lot of alms being given by the kings, and especially the king visits such places. But maybe Kalki was a modern writer, did not know whether whatever Kalki said was true or false. I spoke to another professor, Tamil professor. I think many of you might have known Dr. Susai from our was retired professor from the Department of Tamil from our college. He's like, ma'am, there are a lot of references, and he started pouring out, and with all Sandanayam, he just started quoting things. And he said, there was a place called Chakkaravala Kote in Manimegle. Okay, of course, it's a kind of what should I say, burial place, kind of a place that's haunted by devils, ghosts, and stuff. But that's where Manimegle comes later. There's a detail, and after I spoke to this professor, I read the Chakkaravala Kote Kade, a very interesting story, of course. And this is where Manimegle serves people with the Ramdasurabi, which is the Akshaya Patram. Okay, this. And and he also said there are a lot of references, and he was also talking about Silapadigaram, where there are a lot of people with disabilities who were kind of employed by the kings and the queens. Okay. They were there in all the. I think we remember this Saraswati Sabadam, this movie where Shivaji Ganesan, is born with a speaking disability, was not able to speak. Right, all of a sudden Saraswati Devi appears in front of him and gives him a boon, and he starts saying Amma, Appa, Adi, etc. Fine, and there you find a character with a disability, but there is another thing. Manorama in that movie, that is she acts as Nagesh's wife. Nagesh works in the palace, and Manorama also works in the palace. And she is a maid to the queen, and she's not able to speak well. The kind of if at all you haven't watched, the younger generations might not have watched this movie. You just at least try to watch a short clipping from the YouTube as to how Manorama she speaks in that particular movie, Saraswati Sabadam. Okay, so it was true, like they were employed in the palace, or where there is a possibility they were employed, and Silapadigaram also talks about it, this professor said. And he also said, in Purananuru, he quoted two songs from Purananuru. When there is a war, there's a public declaration stating that, like Kum Kurudu, and he gave a detailed list of disabilities. And he said there was a public announcement with this Murasim that all these people who are disabled should get inside, okay, and be safe in their houses. They are not supposed to come out of their houses because they were protected by the government. So a kind of a government, okay, that's a tradition that we come from. That is the greatness of the tradition, a Tamil tradition that we come from. And of course, we are into Western philosophy, we are into Western theories, but then the awareness that we had then, okay, is claimed by these people, these Westerners now, okay, in the name of all new theories, okay, your concept of shunyata, suryam, nothingness, okay, as a part of post-structuralism and stuff. Okay, let's not go into those details. Let's stick on to critical disability theory. Okay. So there are different ways in which you can approach this idea of critical disability theory. So why this critical disability theory? First of all, like, actually it was disability theory earlier. Okay, people talked about disability theory, and disability theory talked about the disabled people. And again, there is a problem with the nomenclature, whether these people are supposed to be called disabled people or people with disabilities. Okay, person first language or the disability first language. So there's still this problem goes on, the debate goes on, and many people prefer person first language. So naturally, persons with disabilities or a person with disability, that is the accepted norm nowadays. But still, there are writers who, scholars working on critical disability theory or disability theory, talking about disabled persons. Okay, so either way, but then I prefer persons with disabilities. Okay. The earlier this theory, disability theory, was focusing on the disabled people with disabilities. Okay, their physical problems, their pains, or maybe how they suffer in the world, how they lack resources, how they do not get a very good position in institutions. All lamentations. Okay. So later, critical disability theory came into existence, and it started talking about the political, okay, and the social, the cultural, okay, even the legal relevance of disability, like how we are supposed to fight against this notion called disability, and also how we are capable of empowering people with disabilities. So that is the idea. So it uses critical theory. So naturally, critical theory, in the sense, critical disability studies is an interdisciplinary field of study, as you all know. Whereas disability studies, of course, even though it was interdisciplinary, it was not able to draw on critical theories much. But critical disability theory was able to draw from ideas like feminism, critical race theory, okay, cultural studies, and too many ideas, legal studies put together. And now we have this new area of study called critical disability studies. Okay, so now we come to a question. There is a word called impairment, and there is an idea called disability. So what is the difference between an impairment and disability? This is very much relevant with reference to this context. Impairment is a physical or a mental, what shall I say, disturbance. Okay, something is wrong. Something is wrong with you physically, or something is wrong. I don't because even this word, the use of this word "wrong" is wrong. Okay, there are certain diseases, physical diseases or mental diseases that people have. Okay, maybe a small abnormality as far as the normal human beings are concerned. Okay, again, you cannot call these things abnormal, because for whatever we consider abnormal is normal to the people who are with impairments. Okay, so it's a very sensitive area, and you cannot use words, as we wish, as one wishes. One cannot use terms and ideas. Okay, so a loss or an abnormality in the physical, function, bodily function, or mental functioning. So that is an impairment. Okay, so then what is a disability? The result of impairment is disability. You have a problem, or rather, I'm sorry to use the word problem, you have some loss or you have some abnormality, and due to this abnormality, you are not able to participate in certain institutions. You are not given equal opportunity in certain institutions, in certain areas of functioning. Okay, so wherever normal human beings are present, and take part in certain activities, a person with this impairment or a particular impairment or a combination of impairments is not able to participate and contribute. So that is a, a disability. Okay. So I actually wanted to share a PPT, but I don't think it's a very powerful one. I believe in presenting my ideas this way. But then at the end of maybe the session, I'll just share the screen and I will give you the names of scholars, give you the names of titles, references, books and stuff. Okay, so I think at that stage, it will be very much relevant. Okay. So there is also a word handicap, okay, which is not preferred very much now. This means either because of this physical impairment or because of this disability, something happens in the society, some obstacle, some issue that you face with the environment, which that becomes a handicap. But normally, okay, now this term is avoided nowadays. You call people as people with disabilities. You don't call them handicapped anymore. Earlier, that was used when we were young, like that was the word to be used, but now it was not to be used anymore. So there are a lot of disabilities, cognitive disabilities, physical disabilities, neuropsychological deficits, developmental disabilities. So where you're either there's some problem with the growth of your physical body or the growth of your mind. So that is developmental disability. And when it is diagnosed, it's going to be very, very painful for the parents. Okay. So there are other mental disabilities like motor disabilities, autism in particular, that you might have heard. Like there are a lot of movies and there are also a lot of books, novels that talk about autism, some learning disability, and Down syndrome and Asperger's syndrome, and a lot of disabilities associated with your reproductive organs, with your sexual organs. So all these things, okay, contribute to your thing. And there's also this disability called intellectual disability. When your IQ is below 70, I think, I'm not very sure. Like long back, I read, like when your IQ is below 70, you're considered to be a person with intellectual disability. So physical, mental, intellectual, okay, all disabilities. And schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, okay, and thing. So before going into the theory, we have to be clear about certain ideas. Okay, the first one is stigma or stigmatization. STIGMA, stigma. We will know that stigma is, or stigmatization is avoiding certain people or insulting certain people or discriminating certain people because they are disabled. Okay, when a person, it happens naturally when a person is kind of mentally disabled, and this person drools and he's dirty, he has not taken a bath for a few days because he's got some mental disorder too, and he comes and sits near you, or when the next seat you're on the bus. Like, how do you feel? Like, you would definitely tend to discriminate, you definitely feel bad, you want to get up in a very as if you have a very broad mind, like you will offer the seat to them and say like feel free, put all your things here, like, or as you sit there out of courtesy, but then you feel so bad and you say like, oh, I have to take bath after I reach home. Okay, so that's it. So that is stigmatization, discriminating people because of their disability. So that is one horrible thing that people endure. Okay, and out of this, is produced this idea called social exclusion. Okay, when there is a problem, when there is a physical problem, the person with this disability is socially excluded. When there is a mental or intellectual deficit or a problem, again this person is kind of and there are also respiratory issues. There are sleeping disorders, there's epilepsy, and there is a blindness, partial blindness, okay, and a lot of other things, farsightedness, nearsightedness, everything, sometimes eating disorders. Sometimes you know a lot of people, even it was believed that Diana had this eating disorder, like she eats and she immediately, I think this condition is called bulimia, I'm not very sure. You go vomit immediately because you want to maintain your size 0 figure. Okay, so this is all part of a disability. And I would like to explain certain terms before we go into a detailed view on this theory called critical disability theory. There is this idea called ableism, ABLEIISM, ableism. So what is ableism? There is this scholar, critical disability scholar called Lewis, T.L. Lewis. He describes ableism as something, it's a kind of a discrimination against people who are disabled by the mere presence of the people with who are able-bodied. Okay, so there's a perfect person with no physical disability. There's no mental disability. He is a very good, as far as the world goes. He's a very naturally, healthy person. That is, he is able-bodied, okay, able-minded. And the most important idea about critical disability theories, as I told you, draws from various ideas, right? Various realms of knowledge, various streams of knowledge. And the most important idea it draws from is intersectionality. Intersectionality is a philosophy or a theory or a way of analysis. You can call it anything. Introduced by a critical race theorist, a lawyer, Kimberly Crenshaw. She's an American. Okay, while she was discussing a few cases, she came to understand that women are discriminated. Black women. I'm not supposed to again use the word black women because she uses the term black. Again, the blacks themselves can address their group as blacks, but we are not supposed to do that. Okay, so African American women are not able to get the justice they are supposed to get in courts because of a combination of two things. One is their race, the other is gender. She has written a very detailed article on intersectionality. It's a long title. I forgot the title. I read it long back for my thesis. So in that she says this woman is not able to get justice, not just because she is a black woman, but she's also a woman. Okay, so both these things intersect. Okay, the idea that she is a woman, the idea that she is black, both intersect, and she is under this intersection, at the point of this intersection, and hence she is discriminated against. So that is the idea that she presents. So there are a lot of things that intersect, class, race, gender, sexuality. Of course, gender is definitely different from sexuality. Age or ageism, for that matter. Gerontology, you might have listened to this great lecture by Dr. Rufus. And ableism is also one such privileged notion. Okay, so white, black. Okay, in the same way, abled, disabled. So ableism is also an idea or a concept that discriminates, that can be used as a tool of discrimination. Okay, like being white, being rich, or being heterosexual. Okay, being able-bodied can turn into a way of discrimination. So that is one idea that you need to understand, that is ableism. And there is also another idea called black disability studies, as I was telling you, like it came from critical race theory again. Okay, critical race theory, as there are a lot of people who proposed this theory, followed this theory, and Kimberly Crenshaw is one. And black disability studies, okay, draws from critical race theory. Okay, and the next idea is body-mind. It's not BODY space MIND. No, As far as critical disability theory goes, it's body mind, BODYMIND as one word, okay, as a continuous word, M in up lowercase letters, body mind, one letter. So what does it say? So normally there's always this body-mind dichotomy. Okay, you have people like JAC who talks about this division. Okay, body is separate and mind is separate. Both are different things. And there's also this question of the superiority of body over mind, which is superior, and always people prefer mind, okay, to be superior. But here, according to critical disability theory, body and mind are the same. Okay, so there's no discrepancy, there's no difference between body and mind. Both are integrated. Okay, and a disability can affect the body, either the body or the mind, or both the body and the mind. So it's kind of integrated. There's no difference between these things. And there's another important idea called CRIP. Crippled. We might have heard of this word crippled. Okay, CRIP, CRIP, CRIP. What is a CRIP? So it is a term used historically, like down the ages, this has been used. This is a very negative term used to oppress disabled people. Okay, and so the disabled people have started using the term now. Okay. Earlier, it was used by the able-bodied people to discriminate against the disabled people, but now the disabled people themselves have started using this term they call it as a term of pride. They're happy to use this name. You might have listened to African Americans addressing one another as nigger. Okay, you nigger, and they use all nasty words, and they call one another as Negroes or nigger. You dirty nigger, you are one with one or two swear words. They can do it, but then we cannot do it. Like a white person or a brown person cannot address a black person as a nigger. Okay, you will be arrested. So in the same way, CRIP is a word that is used with pride by the disabled, but the able-bodied people are not supposed to use the word CRIP. That is one idea. And CRIP is also attached to theory, which is called CRIP theory. Okay, there is this popular critical disability theorist called Robert McCruger. Okay, Robert McCruger, he introduced this theory called CRIP theory. And he merges two theories, pure theory and critical disability studies. Okay, as I told you, critical disability studies draws in from various theories, and one such thing is pure theory. Okay, so whatever a cure is kind of disabled as far as heterosexual normativity is concerned. Okay, so CRIP theory, CRIP is different. CRIP theory is different. CRIP is a term that is used to discriminate against the people who are disabled. Now they have started using it as a term of pride, but only they can use it, like we cannot use it. But CRIP theory is a theory that is a combination of two ideas. One is pure theory and other is critical disability studies. So people with cure practices, LGBTQ, and Q, there's a plus nowadays. Like it goes on and on and on and on, like too many varieties of sexualities. So that there are people, cure people with disabilities. So how do you approach them? How do you look at them? How do they experience disability, or how do they experience sexuality? Both. Okay. So that is theory, and there is also disability justice movement, like let's not, and one important idea, super CRIP, and I'll be discussing mothering. Okay, mothering as a very important concept, mothering disabled children. Okay, and super CRIP is a very important concept here. So it's I don't know, like I don't know whether to laugh at or to feel so bad about this term CRIP, as like as a crippled person, a disabled person. How come super CRIP? Okay, Superwoman, Wonder Woman, okay, Supergirl, and such things. And a person, kind of disabled person or a person with a disability who is way beyond others. Okay, you might have seen a lot of television shows presenting disabled persons performing wonders, okay, performing great things with a great intelligent quotient with, and or maybe physically they are able to do something really great. Okay, so that is a super like those who are capable of accomplishing superhuman tasks. Okay, such people are called super crips. Okay, and sometimes super crip concept can be considered from two ways. One is when they are really way above the other people, when they are able to perform something, and sometimes a very disabled person dresses up well and goes out maybe to a party. Okay, and people call him or her a super group. Okay, so that talks about the low expectations that people have about people with disabilities. So that is a thing. And you also have feminist disability studies, which will come to later. Okay, fine. And there is another important concept called MAD studies. MAD studies is it investigates this idea called mental illness. Okay, so again, you cannot call a person mad. Okay, but a mad person, a member of this group, can call each other, one another mad, but you cannot address a person mad. There are a lot of problems like bipolar disorder or autism or schizophrenia or other things. Okay, and there is this idea called mad liberation. Okay, so it talks about the violence in psychiatric institutions. Okay, so they are called psychiatric survivors. Okay, and there are a lot of novels. One who flew to the cuckoo's nest, or even Veronica Decides to Die by Paulo Coelho, and many other novels like that talk about the atrocities, okay, the violence, the electric shocks, unnecessary, unwanted electric shocks given to patients, the brutal punishments, and either the doctors themselves, like, or the workers over there, like who take command in their hands and do all nonsensical things. Okay, so these people are called psychiatric survivors, people who had escaped asylums, okay, who just came out somehow. Yeah, there are a lot of movies, English movies, in which asylums are presented, and it's miserable. It's really pathetic to look at people residing inside, and these people pretend as if they are really good, they behave well for a period of time in order to come out of it, and the doctors diagnose that one. They say like you're pretending, and your term is extended maybe for another few months or so. Fine. So there are a lot of models of disability. A critical disability theory proposes a lot of models, and the first model is the biomedical model of disability. Biomedical model of disability, which is also called the medical. From that you have the medical model of disability. So what is this? It is either an impairment or a disability, like anything that maybe a physical one or a mental one that can be related in terms of medicine. A treatable or non-treatable impairment, physical impairment or mental impairment. That is biomedical model or medical model. The thing is, even if it is not treatable, like there are a lot of cancer patients. We know, like when cancer is diagnosed at the advanced stage, it's not the person cannot be cured, but then we still trust the hospitals, these great institutions. We go and in spite of this disease being non-treatable, we rely on the doctors. We depend on the doctors. There are some diseases that can be treated, and we go to the doctors. And any impairment that can be treated from a medical perspective, is a biomedical that comes under medical model of disability. Okay, so there is another thing called the social model of disability. Social model of disability is a British model. Okay, most of the other models are American models, but this particular model, social model of disability, is a British model that talks about, it avoids the use of the term impairment. It talks about disability, and it does not talk about the body of the disabled person or the person with the disability. It talks about the society, about the discrimination that is found in the society, about how institutions do not give easy access to people with disabilities, okay, into their fold. Okay, that is the social model of disability. So whatever problem arises is not because of the person with a disability, but only with the institutions or the society. So that is the social model of disability. There are a lot of models: minority model of disability, a professional model of disability, and there is also this one important model, tragedy or the charity model of disability. Now that's what many of us do, right? When there's a special occasion, when it's your birthday, or when your father's birthday, sister's birthday, or when it's a death anniversary, somebody, you go visit charity institution, maybe a place, a blind school, or some place where the disabled children or elderly people live, and you just go serve food, and they all pray for you, and you're like, "Ivanga romba nalla irukkanum kadavule," whoever had given you food. Okay, so that is the charity model of disability. People deserve pity. Okay, the disabled people deserve your pity. So that is the charity model, or the tragedy model of disability. And there's also this moral model of disability that talks about, a disability is a result of the sin that you have committed. Maybe your father, your parents, or your grandfather, or somebody, so something is wrong morally in the family, and then and you have the doctrine of karma, right? Karma never fails. It's always there, lingering, hovering over your head, to catch you and to knock you out at the right time. So that is the moral model of disability. And there are other things. There's this empowering model of disability, which wants people to fight, people with disabilities and without disabilities. Okay, you need to fight. You need to kind of find empowerment for the people who are disabled. Okay, there is another important model of disability called the economic model of disability. So the participation of the people who are disabled in the industry, in the workforce, in generation of income, okay, in the production, in the area of production, how they contribute to the society, to the industry, to the factory, or like and one more thing, there is a law in America that allows lesser amount of pay to the disabled people. It's there in the law, like these people can be paid less than other people who are able-bodied. Okay, so how much the relationship between the individual and the employer, and the individual and the state, like how they contribute to the economy of the nation. And so all these ideas on, and there is one great model, religious model of disability, like oldest model of disability. And there are a lot of religious traditions that have that follow this model. Of course, the Judeo-Christian tradition also talks. It's a punishment from God for some. Of course, moral model is different from that is kind of you kind of judge. People judge, whereas here God judges you. Even you've committed a sin, you're punished for whatever you've done. And the market model of disability. Okay, so a lot of things, and human rights based model of disability also. And so there are a lot of models. I'm not going to discuss all these things. And fine. Now, who is considered to be disabled? There is this biggest question. There is this beautiful saying. There is this word or this statement: everybody is disabled. You can see disability. Only when you know how to see. There is disability everywhere. Okay, or you or like I or anybody for that matter is soon going to enter into this field called disability, because we're all going to be aged. Okay, and one thing, there are doctors, there are therapists, there are people who work in the health departments, who call themselves people dealing with disability. And there is another popular theorist and activist, Nirmala Nirmala who is against this idea. She says anybody who treats a person with a disability, or anybody who deals with a person with disability, is not a disability a theorist or a disability specialist. A person who really works on activism. That is what critical disability theory does. Whereas disability studies earlier was very academic, purely academic. So it was taught in the universities. There were courses in disability studies, BA programs, MA programs, PhD programs in disability studies. So that's what disability studies was doing. But then the critical disability theory started fighting, okay, started its activism, okay, brought in this concept of intersectionality into its fold. And there were, as I told you, multiple categories of race, class, gender, sexuality, sexual identity, nation, able-bodiedness, all these things intersecting at a particular point, and you fighting against it, okay, for these people. So this person like who is an activist or a theorist or a worker who really deals with people with disability. And any bodily pain cannot be considered a disability again. Okay, it should be an impairment. It should stop you from doing certain things. It should prevent you from doing something. So that is the thing. And another question of power. Okay, so who decides who this person with disability is? And there is always this question of power and powerlessness. Okay, and the state. Okay, and the question of politics. Okay, what institutions have in reserve for you, and what the government has in reserve for you, and what the society has in reserve for you. Like this power versus powerlessness, power of the able-bodied or the policymakers, and the powerlessness of the people with disabilities. That is another important idea that is that becomes a major focus of critical disability studies. Okay, so this is this idea called disability is always in a state of flux. Can you say like this person is eternally disabled? You cannot. Okay, maybe a person is disabled for a short period of time, for a longer period of time, and then this person is cured and he becomes able-bodied. So this idea of disability associated with a person is always in a flux. And this category called the disabled is also always in a state of flux, because this person can leave this fold. Okay, this person becomes a so-called normal and he goes out or she goes out, and another person enters this fold. So there's always a constant movement. Okay, the inside and outside this area called the disability. And there are certain people who understand the vulnerability of the disabled, and who had started applying this concept of disability to animals also. And there is now an emerging field called critical animal studies. I'm not very much aware of this branch of knowledge. I have not read much about it. I'm quite ignorant about it, but I only know that there is this evolving branch called critical animal studies. So, fine. Before going into an important concept, I would like to tell you what is the approach of critical disability theory. Critical disability theory can also be called critical disability studies. Okay, it can be called either way. So it is an understanding disability from a political perspective, from a cultural perspective, from an economic perspective, from a historical perspective, from a social perspective, in all the ways put together. Okay, so it teaches us to think about disability in a way that brings some kind of positivity to the disabled people. Okay, so you're not going to discriminate anymore against people who are disabled. So that is the main focus of critical disability studies. Okay, and there was a movement called disability movement that began in the 1960s in the United States of America. Okay, and this was inspired by critical theory and feminism. So in that way, disability studies started emerging. Okay, so there is a collective called Critical Disability Studies Collective. Okay, and it is a dynamic field, again an interdisciplinary field, and with various points of entry. Okay, because it's a collective, so it can bring into its fold any person with any kind of impairment, with any kind of disability. So, some critical disability studies is not just the study of the disabled people, that we need to understand. So you cannot say like you talk about a character in a novel, in which the protagonist is a mentally a disabled person. Okay, you just talk about this person, or there is a sociological research in which you talk about the bodily functions of this person, and how he suffers. Like that's not a critical disability studies. Okay, so it is a method to understand and to analyze various interpolations, various systems of power, okay, and how various systems of power operate, okay, how they function, how they oppress people, okay. So the question of power, the question of oppression, the question of discrimination plays a major role. Instead of the disease in itself, that is the duty of the doctors, that is the the doctors to the pain or the suffering. But there is also this problem, either disability studies or the critical disability studies, they do not give too much of importance about bodily pain, okay, or bodily pleasure. Okay, that is one critique, okay, that is placed against critical disability studies, and we need to accept that also. But then this is very much focusing on, or this focuses on how the systems of power operate to bring about oppression and discrimination. So I'd like to give an example. When I talk about power and discrimination, there is this thing called the prison industrial complex, okay, in America. I think I've spoken about this elsewhere. The prison industrial complex, like the most of the Latino Americans or the African Americans, they are incarcerated, they're in prison, okay, for no reason at all, and they'll be imprisoned for even minor things, or even without any fault of theirs, like they are imprisoned. The way power functions in America, in any country for that matter. Okay, and these people are imprisoned, and even disabled people are imprisoned. And those people who can do some work, okay, in spite of their disability, in spite of the impairment, they are given works. They are placed in different localities. Like they'll be asked to clean cemeteries, they'll be asked to clean churches, they'll be working on production of mobile phones, laptops, computers, whatever. There are a lot of jobs that these prisoners can engage in. Okay, even the disabled prisoners, look at the condition, and the government earns a lot by engaging these disabled people in, say for example, Motorola or Microsoft, or some big company. Even Apple or any industry, okay, gets work done by the disabled people, and it earns in billions, okay. Whereas what do these people get? Nothing, okay. So how power is used by states or the state, okay, in order to discriminate first the disabled people, and how to exploit them, oppress them and exploit them. Okay, so that is the idea. That is what critical disability theory is focusing on. I was just giving you an example. So it is also a critique of social norms and social structures that stigmatize certain issues related to body mind. body mind as a single word, how society discriminates you, how it's not only the discrimination that is done by the state, it is not only the oppression that is produced by the state. You all know the idea of ideology and other things. Okay, so let me not go into detail. So there are your relatives, there are your friends, there are your neighbors, there are other people like who kind of discriminate you and bring trouble and stigmatize you. Stigmatization is a very important concept as far as this is concerned. So it is not just an academic endeavor. Earlier, disability studies appeared to be just an academic endeavor. Of course, it was trying to be an activist thing, and that is how critical disability studies was born. And there are some people who say like it is just an extension. Critical disability studies is just an extension of disability studies, so it's nothing what should I say, new. Or there are some people who say like of course it is new. That's it. In 1999, like the social model of disability was accepted, the British model was accepted, and for a long period, imagine 1999, for a long period of time, it was the ruling policy, social model of disability, but now it is challenged because the critics nowadays do not accept it because they talk about a lot of policy, legislation, theory, history, ethics, and all these things, and they say like you just cannot say like society discriminating people and people not getting a place or recognition in this place. That is a disability theory. You cannot say that. That's what they say. Fine. So earlier disability studies was talking about an individual's deficit. Okay, there's some problem, some deficit. Okay, that can be cured or that can be treated through medical means. So that was what disability studies was doing earlier. But later, and they thought like there can also be rehabilitation. Okay, of course, there's a problem. There can also be a rehabilitation, and that was what was believed by disability theorists. But now there's a shift. There's a shift in the focus. Okay, so it talks about the paradigms of power. As I was telling you, the paradigms of power, the social paradigm, the cultural paradigm, the political paradigm, and with an understanding of a law, with an understanding of how history has been recorded. Of course, we are going to discuss Foucault soon. Okay, and we'll be knowing like the genealogical and archaeological approach of Michel Foucault, one of the greatest French philosophers. Okay, so and there is also another important term that we need to understand: neurotypical. When you talk about able-bodied persons, it talks about a person with a perfect body, okay, without any physical impairment. How do you call a person without any mental impairment? You call him a neurotypical person. So there are a lot of recent studies nowadays coming up talking about mental deficit. And earlier in disability studies, people were focusing only on physical impairments. They were not talking much about mental impairments. Mental impairments did not find a place in earlier disability studies, but critical disability studies had brought in a lot of mental impairments into its fold, and it talks about neurotypical persons versus mentally impaired persons. Okay, so there is this idea called stimming. Okay, an idea that troubles us a lot. There are people, especially people with autism, children with autism, who kind of what stimming is. It's a kind of a behavior that children engage in to manage their sensory overload. They sometimes they just flap their hands. Sometimes they just keep picking their nails. Sometimes they kind of start knocking on the table, or they start walking here and there, or something happens. A repetitive action that is so typical of an autistic person or other mentally impaired persons. That's called stimming. Another painful concept. Okay, so that needs to be taken into consideration when these people, when people with mental impairments, go out into the society, go out into the institutions, so that's what I was trying to quote this, but now it's here. Disability is everywhere. Once you know how to look for it. A famous activist called Douglas Bainton presents this idea: disabilities everywhere. Once you know how to look for it. Fine. So there are certain essays written by people who are themselves disabled, or there are certain essays who are written by people who are activists, okay, for the disabled, okay, and all brilliant essays. And I'll try to give you a list. I'm not know whether I typed that out in the PPT. I'll see. Okay, but there is this book called Future Manifestos. Okay, and that book contains a lot of articles about people with disabilities. Okay, and there is this essay article by Sonia Loftus. Sonia Loftus is an autistic person. She has written this essay called Dear Neurodiversity. Dear Neurodiversity Movement, put your shoes on. Dear Neurodiversity Movement, put your shoes on. So why, I was wondering, why should she ask a movement to put its shoes on? What's the relevance? I was just wondering after I read the title. But then after I read the article, like, it was kind of mind-blowing. She's an autistic person. She's a professor. Okay. The only problem with this person is, of course, she has other issues. She often forgets to wear her shoes, put her shoes on. She kind of finds it uncomfortable to put her shoes on. And imagine an American university, like standing in front of a class without your shoes on. It's normally a normal person, a sane person would not do that. Okay. And she's talking about that. And there are a lot of other ideas, a lot of other things that were related to the theory. But then she was focusing on that. And in that essay, she says that the autistic persons should do two things. One is to mellow down the angry tone. Like there are a lot of articles written by people, autistic people, that shows a very angry tone, because people don't understand them. This stimming thing, right? That's part of their behavior, and they also get very angry. And so she says, like, in all our writings, we need to mellow down our writings. We need to bring down that anger. And she also says we need to reflect on respectability politics. Okay, we need to gain respect in society. How can you do that? You can manage your public performance of stimming, like and earlier it was believed, like flapping your hands is a very horrible thing to do in society, in public. When a child does it, கையை காலை உதறிட்டு அழறான் பாரு. Okay, and parents, especially grandparents, become angry when a child does that. Uncles and aunts don't like it because they know that maybe there is some problem involved if this is going to continue. Okay, and they want to curb that down at a very young age. Okay, so that is it. And she says, like, we need to be more respectable. We need to play this important politics of gaining respectability through your public performance of stimming. And this public performance is supposed to be kind of very authentic. Okay, there are autistic people who can fake stimming. Okay, sometimes they can fake as if they're stimming. Even in epilepsy, people say, like, sometimes it is what do you call pseudo epilepsy. Okay, instigated by the mind. It's like a person kind of a bodily reflex that resembles epilepsy. Okay, so she says we need to fight against institutionalized discrimination and dehumanization. And she says, stim loud and proud. Okay, and she affirms at the end of the article, she says, I always try to wear my shoes when I come to the class, or maybe when I write on the board and I just come down to meet the students, talk to the students, interact with the students. I forget to, wear my shoes on, and I'm not bothered about it anymore, she says. I don't worry, okay, I don't worry what people think about me, and let people laugh, let people smile, let people mock at me, or maybe after, and she says initially after this, okay, because what matters is the intellect of this woman and not the way she dresses herself up with the shoes on or the shoes off. She says, sing loud and proud and authentically and thoughtfully and joyfully. So she says, embrace your impairment, embrace, accept it, okay, and try to do your best. And that is one thing. And there is another essay or article by Torres who writes, the title is Not Now But Right Now. Not Now But Right Now. Okay. So he talks about this problem in US, and he says, of course, there are a lot of minority groups in America, Latino Americans, and African Americans, Jewish Americans, Asian Americans. But then the highest, the largest minority group, the highest number of people, the minority population is the disabled. She says, 19% of people are persons with disabilities. It's a very, I think it's a very serious thing. There should be a lot of social awareness about these things. 19% of the population being disabled. Okay, and she says 1/3 of the people who are there. Like if the situation is so in America, think about other countries. Think about I don't say like America is one of the greatest countries where you have everything. Definitely no, like when COVID-19 happened. Okay, we all knew where American medical standards stood. Okay, how people suffered. We all know that. In spite of it, like I'm telling you, like if a developed country like America is struggling with disability, what about developing countries? What about third world nations? What about those nations who are torn with war and stuff? Okay, it's really difficult. And she says 1/3 of the people with disability or in poverty, like below poverty line, they are in poor health, they are not even able to get good food, and they suffer a lot. Okay, so there's another issue. There's an excellent article written by Christina Fernandez, who calls herself Tina, and Rachel Robertson. This concerns us, like us in the sense I'm trying to identify myself with the women folk here. Bringing maternal studies into critical disability studies. So, what are you going to do with your disabled child? Okay. So she takes clues from feminist maternal studies and autoethnography, and she starts writing. And Rachel is an academician; she's also an activist. And she says, went to a conference, and I had to present a paper. This conference was on feminism, okay, and there was a slot that was given to her, and she was the last in the slot because the topic is disability, okay. So feminism and critical disability theory was given the last slot, and she says, feminism, there is not enough scope in feminism for disability, which is very true. Okay, of course, she says there is a lot of scope for disability in intersectionality, because intersectionality is also one branch of feminism, but in the regular white-based rich kind of feminism, there is no place for disability, or there's not much place for disability. Okay. So she says motherhood is looked upon as an institution, okay, it is looked upon as an experience, it is looked upon as an identity, or even it is looked upon as a subjectivity. But what happens? And she draws in her inspiration from thinkers like Patricia Hill Collins, Sarah Reddick, or Adrian Rich, for that matter. We all know a very popular American writer, poet. And she says there is a kind of a cultural creation of motherhood, okay, impacting disability. So there is always a lot of expectation, okay, and there is this concept called intensive mothering. Many people, especially in India, we all do intensive mothering, complete care. We have to be with the child 24/7, okay. We always watch, what it is doing, where it's going, like what has happened, and whether it's lying or whether it's telling the truth, or like we do a lot, and there's a lot of expectation. Whether you're taking the child to a class, or a music class or a dance class, or like what are the things that you teach it, and moral values, religious values, like whether you take it to the church, whether your child is able to read the Bible or the Quran or the Gita or any scripture for that matter, like the way you care for the child, like how special your child is. Of course, this concept of special is very different in this context, but then how special your child is, whether it knows how to play the piano or the guitar or the keyboard, like all the extra things, like how capable you are as a mother. Okay, there's a lot of fuss made about the people, like the mother of so-called normal children. But she says there is also okay, there is mothering of disabled children. So it's very painful. She says this experience, is a kind of heightened form of intensive mothering, and there's a lot of expectation. And she says there are two things that the mother of a disabled child is supposed to face. One is the needs of the child himself or herself. The other is the higher exposure to experts. That is, the mother always needs the doctor or the these members of the state, representations of institutions, therapists and all these people. Like always the pressure from there. Of course, well-intentioned pressure. The doctor says like you have to do this, you have to do that. See to it that the child goes to, does yoga, does exercise, does this, does that, and all these things. And then there's also this pressure from the needs of the child. Like it's not able to function on its own. Like you have to clean it, wash it, you have to, feed it and stuff. And like, it's very difficult. And she says the mothers themselves become disabled because of they do not really become disabled. And disablement, she says, okay, the disablement of mothers because of the child's disability. So a very important concept as women, or if there are feminists here, you need to understand this idea of disablement of women. Because of the disability of the child. And there is always the self-blame. You always think like I've done something, like I have not looked into my child well, because some of us go out to work and we think like if at all, if only I had spent some quality time with my child, like my child would have been better, and all that blaming things and all. Like there's always your doctor, your social worker, your psychologist, your teacher, your therapist. Your teacher calls them. The teacher calls you every now and then, like very problematic. This guy, especially children with hyperactivity. Like they do a lot of mess in the classrooms, and you're called often to the schools, and you have to go explain things and stuff. It's very kind of that is the disablement that the parents get. So there is always this myth of maternal omnipotence. Okay, a mother is capable of doing everything. She can do anything that she wants as far as the child is concerned. Okay, and the maternal responsibility for all that happens to the child. Like if something good happens, it's because of the mother. Sometimes it's because of the father. Sometimes if something happens bad to the child, like it's all because of bad mothering. There is that problem also. And so she says like there is a too much of a big gap in feminism, that has to be filled in with this concept. And she says critical disability studies is as this generative potential, okay, that allows us to move beyond the restrictive discourses available in mainstream discussions. So only here, and only here you can talk about the society says that there are two things. One is you feel good, sometimes you're feeling happy, sometimes you feel bad, it's a burden. definitely looking after a child with a disability is a burden. Of course, it's a joy too. Your child does certain things. There are some changes, and you're feeling good. And sometimes, it's a burden. But then, when you are in a society, the society does not expect you to say that bringing up this child is a burden. The society does not want that. The society wants a very positive, idea from you as a mother. It's really good. I'm really honored. I'm really, to be the mother, like to take too much of care about my child, and that's what the society wants. But then she says in critical disability studies, mothers who are activists themselves or mothers who are not activists, they can share freely about their experiences. They can say, like, of course, it's a burden. I feel I'm in pain, I'm in physical pain, I'm in mental agony because I'm not able to handle things. In many cases, especially in Western countries, fathers are not able to bear that, like they leave, they desert the family, and it's only the mother, the single parent, who has to look after the disabled child. So there are two things, as I've already told you, super crib. Sometimes the mother is respected because the child becomes a super crip. He or she is able to perform something in a real way. So either the child is looked upon as a tragic loss, the mother becomes a tragic victim, or the child becomes a tragic victim, or it becomes an inspirational hero for all the other children with disabilities. Okay. So now. There are curative cares, medicinal cares, I was talking. So sometimes the disease is really curable, okay, and fine. You wait for a cure. Maybe it's there around the corner. It's somewhere there, like anytime it may tap your door and may enter, and your child may be cured, and it's going to be a happy thing for you, maybe the happiest thing for you. But then if the disease is degenerative, okay. And you need to take this example, Mitch Albom's novel, Tuesdays with Maury. Brilliant novel. Please, for God's sake, read this novel, Tuesdays with Maury, by Mitch Albom. That talks about, I forgot the name of the disease, a very long name. A professor who suffers with this disease, and a former student who is now a very successful person, a very, very rich person, happens to hear about the professor's illness, and he visits the professor, and every Tuesday, the professor's name is Maury, every Tuesday he sits with Maury and learns what life is all about. Okay, so the disease starts from the foot, okay, and it's gradually, like, it moves upwards, and he says, like, at one point, like, I'll not be able to speak, and talk to me as much as possible, and get to know things as much as possible, and he records everything. Okay, this student records everything. The beautiful relationship between a teacher and a student, okay, where little things about how his bodily movements are stopped, how he needs. Earlier he was able to manage his private things, by himself, but then he starts, depending on others, and he is very free talking about all these things, about his dependency, about the touch especially. He says it gives me a lot of pleasure when somebody touches me. Okay, so when somebody is sick, when somebody, maybe COVID-19 wants us to keep social distancing, but the best cure that he can give is not isolation, touch, like when it is not infectious, the touch that you give, the positive words that you talk to a person cures the person. And he says, like, of course, it's a degenerative disease and he's going to die, this person is going to die. But then he says the little touches, like, that gives me a lot of pleasure, he says. And you cannot but cry reading this novel, Tuesdays with Maury. Okay, and there is always this guilt, this worry, and subjective. I'm talking about two kinds of burdens that a mother faces: subjective burden and the objective burden. Embarrassment, discrimination, stigma, all these things. And one of your relatives will say, a very sarcastic comment about what your child is now, or what you are now, what your husband is now, or what your wife is now with this disability. Okay, that stigmatization, that discrimination, that hurts you. It's subjective burden. Sometimes there are objective burdens in which, there are a lot of social constraints. Sometimes you spend a lot of time caring. You have other works, to, your social life to look into, but then you give a lot of care to, and your financial pressure. You have to spend a lot of money, much of your income, for the child, and other daily, everyday hassles when you have a disabled child. So that is one important idea about the critical disability theory, that which it critiques feminism, right? It draws from feminism, but it also critiques feminism, stating that feminism does not allow this opportunity, okay, for people to give voice, to represent issues. Okay, so that is it. And the most important aspect, okay, of this concept of mothering is the suspicion that the disabled child has towards its mother. Okay, the disabled child does not believe you at times, like when you are supposed to take the child to the doctor, or to the therapist, the child does not believe you. Okay, the child asks question, or maybe he or she doubts you. Okay, that is again one thing. Okay, so that's, and there are a lot of areas. This is a vast area. Like, I've been reading and reading and reading. I'm not able to still complete reading, because any theory cannot be totally read, totally understood, totally comprehended. And there is this another aspect called disability and war, disability and militarism. Okay, so why wars? There are a lot of reasons, and again the question of power. Okay, the question of power, the question of colonialism and post-colonial critical disability theory. I've already told you in my introductory session. I told you there is an idea called post-colonial critical disability studies. Okay, so there's a lot of war that are going on, and as a result, like, many people are disabled. And there is this article titled Disabling Militarism, Disabling Militarism itself, okay? Theorizing anti-militarism, disability and displacement. So it talks about war and disability. And this writer, Mark Antony, he says, war is the largest producer of disability. Okay, so he says, wage war against war. You say no to war. Like, nobody should be engaging in war. Only if you know the pain of the disabled, like, you'll understand like what it is to be engaged in a stupid war. That is a result of the strategy of some idiot who is sitting over there in power. Okay, that's it. So he calls it again as a military-industrial nexus, or military-industrial academic nexus. Okay, why military-industrial academic nexus? Because the academicians are also at fault, he says. Because industry, of course, if you want to produce a weapon, like, you have a lot of OFT, ordnance factories, you have HAPP, or other stuff. A lot of places, government-owned places that manufacture arms and ammunitions. Okay, that is one thing. Okay, and these are industries, and of course they are employed. They are brought to the military. And why this military-industrial academic nexus? Who invents all these things? It is the scientists, it is the scholars, it is we, maybe as students and teachers of literature. Maybe we do not have a very big role. Maybe in that way we are, I'm not, maybe have escaped, or we have helped people escape, or we have supported people, or we do not know. But if you are in the field of science, if you are scientists, like you might have heard of the story of the invention of the atomic bomb and other stuff, like and especially the Hiroshima and the Nagasaki. It still haunts us, right? August 6 and 9, and other wars around us, like it can be Kargil war, or the war that happened in the Tamil war in Sri Lanka, or Syria, any place for that matter, Palestine, like the dead bodies and stuff, and dead bodies is a different story. What we're dealing with here is disability. Okay, the impairment, the physical impairment of it. You might have Slaughterhouse-Five by this writer Kurt Vonnegut, okay, Slaughterhouse Five is a wonderful novel that talks about war and disability, okay, and how it affects, like how it affects you psychologically. This post-traumatic some syndrome, right, that affects you, and because of this military-industrial academic nexus, war is created. War is, the nations are capable of engaging in war. Okay, and he also draws on two things: critical disability studies and math studies, which I've already introduced to you. And he says, like, these are, there are psychiatric survivors. It's really painful after the war. There are a lot of movies that are even taken because the people have been to war and they come back and they suffer. People, this dismemberment, they lose limbs, and even there's this movie. This movie in which Mammootty and Aishwarya Roy eventually fall in love, Kandukonde, where Mammootty becomes, physically impaired. He loses a leg. Okay, that's it. And he also exploits or presents towards the darker side of psychiatry, or the soldiers are sent under psychiatric care. Okay, and they know the pain, okay, and the negative effects of psychiatry. So critical disability studies, of course, accepts that medicine is fine, treating patients is fine, but then it also talks about the power relationship. I do not know, I wanted to talk about Foucault, but it's already 8:05. I heard that you also have a valediction and maybe questioning session. I don't know how to bring about all these ideas. There's always this darker side of psychiatry. Foucault says there's this concept called biopower, right? The state controls you. The state controls bodies, body, the state controls bodies. Like what aspects are controlled? The most important idea is, reproduction. How you're capable of being a normal human being, a strong human being. How long you're going to live, and eugenics. Who can reproduce and who cannot reproduce, who must reproduce and who must not reproduce. That is another important thing about bio. Thing. And he also talks about this issue called surveillance. Okay, surveillance. You might have heard of this word called panopticon. 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 OPTICON. Panopticon. And it's an idea from Jeremy Bentham. Jeremy Bentham is, of course, in history of sexuality. Somebody has given this answer. He talks about biopower in history of sexuality. Fine. And this Jeremy Bentham's panopticon is, of course, it's a model prison. This prison has a person, a warden, a prison warden at the center. And it's a kind of a circular kind of a prison where there are inmates in the cells of the prison, and the inmates all know that there is a person, there's this warden standing over there, watching all the inmates of the prison. Of course, they cannot see the warden, but the warden can see them, and they cannot engage in a fight. They cannot engage in any escape mechanisms, or they have to be docile, otherwise they'll end up being punished. Of course, this prison was not really built, but then this idea still holds. Okay, based on that, like other prisons were built. Okay, so this panopticon is a universal idea that is used by the government. You are always watched. In the other session, colonialism, I think Dr. Melvin was talking when he says you're watched, now you're always being watched. People know what you're doing. And even this novel 1984 by George Orwell talks about you being watched, right? It started that long back. Literature started recording it long back. It says that you're being watched. So that's it. The state uses this idea of panopticon to watch you, to monitor you, okay? And it employs this concept called eugenics as to control, like who is supposed to reproduce. A disabled person must not reproduce. Okay, and a disabled person is compulsorily sterilized. Okay, so you must have heard of compulsory sterilization, especially in America. Of course, there are a lot of countries, but then especially in America, there was compulsory sterilization meant for African American women. Okay, they were supposed to be neurotics. They were supposed to be psychologically ill. Okay, and they were sometimes ill, they were sometimes blamed to be ill. Of course, they were not ill in reality, and they were kind of sterilized. Okay, that is one idea that we need to think about. So this man, and that is what people are against. Philosophers like Foucault is against. Of course, he says like power can enact in many ways. Look, it can be positive or it can be negative, of course, but it can also be positive because it can also protect you, because earlier in those days, the sovereign power, the king had the power to kill, execute everybody. But then later, like in the current democratic situations, it's the responsibility of the king, so-called prime minister or the president, who will think of themselves as kings, they are here to protect. Okay, that is one thing. And with each moment of power is amidst us, power is within us, power is in us, it exudes, from everywhere. And with every moment of power, there is a moment of resistance. That's what Foucault says. Okay, brilliant idea. So it's not like power cannot be fought against. It's not like power cannot be handled. It's not like power cannot be managed. But he says with every possible eruption of power, there is every possible eruption of there is resistance, and we have to keep on resisting. Sometimes people call Foucault a person with no morals. Of course, he had a different kind of sexuality and he died of AIDS and a lot of other things. But then now, after reading Foucault from a different point of view, people have started accepting that Foucault was a man of morals, of course, from a different perspective. Okay, he believed that people should be free. Fine. So he also brings in, when he was talking about war, he talks about this idea of misfitting and displacement. Okay, till then, like you might have seen people on the war front, or people who are, there are people who go to army to be nurses or to be cooks, or for other works. But then if you are a soldier, you have a physique, you have a different kind of a physique, you can look at a man and then you can identify him as a soldier. Okay, his body, he's able-bodied, hyper masculine kind of body. It's very clear over there that he is a soldier. Okay, but after this dismemberment in the war, there is a kind of displacement. There is a kind of it's called psi violence, PSY, hyphen violence, psi violence, psychological kind of violence. You feel the violence around you. You witness the violence around you, and you feel bad, and you endure the violence that is done to you, and that in a way creates a kind of psi violence, and it is very, very oppressive. For what? Ultimately, what are you fighting for? For some power. Okay, and you cannot resist that power because you become a part of that power. And so that is one important point. And so madness, craziness, okay, it is very, very, very integral part of militarism. And so he says this is a space filled with politics and privileges. Army or military setup is a place filled with politics and privileges. So, of course, there is sometimes justice, sometimes there is injustice, and you might have read Slaughterhouse 5, and how this man gets all the credit without doing anything. It's like just hiding under thing. So this oppressive power, and also the possibility of emancipation, as I already told you, as Foucault, there is power and also there is resistance. So even in this military space, there is power. Of course, there is also a possibility of emancipation. So only what has made this radical thinking. Okay, and So and he says we are all located, we are all defined by, we are all enmeshed in our geographies. He says, so you are in your geography, you are comfortable in your geography. Like once you leave this place and you go to some other place, you find that kind of displacement. Okay, and sometimes you get an extended limb. Prosthetics, okay, you get something else, or you become obese because you are not fit anymore, you're not able to exercise anymore, and that space, spatio-temporality is a very, very important concept in understanding critical disability theory. Spatial temporality, okay, like the space changes, time changes. Okay, once you understand that your child, your child is maybe a 3-year old girl, okay, and you understand that she has some development, she's diagnosed with some developmental disorder. Like what happens? There's a change, there's a shift in temporality. Okay, you earlier it was a different kind of way you thought about the future of your child, like a normal future, like at 5, at 10 you should do this, 15 like a 13 puberty and stuff, and then 18 to 21 and like all things. But then when there's a developmental problem, the temporality changes. Okay, the future becomes the present, and the present becomes the future, and both kind of collide in a very painful way. So that is it. And now maybe this man becomes obese, and the space becomes different, and the time becomes different, and all these things are different. Disable a person. So that is another important idea that these people talk about. Okay, and they also talk about prosthetics, new fittings. Military is known for this. That is why I said military industry academia nexus. Okay, so it's a military technology. Of course, it's also a civilian technology. The prosthetics limb that you have, either the leg or your hand or some part of this your body, has a range of motion. Okay, like too many things beyond that of your congenital limbs, like whatever you have. So prosthetics is in a way a dangerous. They say prosthetics is good. Prosthetics is good. Sometimes it calls to our attention the limits and boundaries of human beings, of human bodies. Sometimes think about this great person, Stephen Hawking. So he was, of course, he was normal. He was born as a normal child, and eventually he got kind of a nervous disorder, and he was not able to communicate with people. Then eventually he had to communicate with people through touchpad, with his finger, and after that he even lost that, and he was able to communicate with people with a single muscle, cheek muscle. Okay, if I remember it right, he was able to communicate with people only with a single cheek muscle. Prosthetics is, I was going to talk about that with reference to technology. But then, prosthetics, is in a way good because it kind of goes beyond, what the human body is not capable of. So it reminds us of what the real human body is lacking. Okay. So the body really lacks a lot of things, whereas the prosthetics is capable of doing wonders. Okay, so that is it. And there's this option of space fit. There's this idea of fitting, like where I'm not able to present you all the ideas. We're running short of time. It's already 8:15. So I try to get these notions, and I'm talking to the students who are attending this webinar. Try to look into these ideas, okay, and search for these ideas. Read some books, okay, that talk about critical disability theory. Okay, so discourse of fitness pervade a militaristic ideology. You need to be fit if you are in a military. Okay, so in military, not all bodies are granted the status of power. Okay, or even the status of person. Okay, only if you are fit, only if you are completely able-bodied, you are considered to be a person. Otherwise, you are considered as a feminized disabled subject. Okay, which is a very, very negative way of stating things, feminized disabled subject. Okay, that's it. So now there is a socio spatial alienation because of this displacement, because of your dismemberment, and there's also violence, physical violence, and also side violence, and also injustice. Okay, so Sonta says war tears, okay, rends, war rips open, okay, and eviscerates, and war scorches, war dismembers, war ruins. So war only can ruin. It's not going to give you any positive thing. It's only going to ruin you, he says. And I'd like to conclude with one last remark about critical disability theory and technology. So this is where I wanted to talk about Stephen Hawkins, where he was able to he suffered from ALS disease, and he was able to manage this. And with technology, this state is trying to control eugenics. Eugenics is the control of population. It's a study of populations. It's a study of how you manage your population. Okay, if you want. Say, for example, I don't want to discuss the Indian concept, then let's discuss the American concept. If you want only Caucasians, white people to give birth, okay, and if that population has to go up, you can give some, monetary benefits or some privileges for white women to decide to give birth to children. And if you do not want the Latino Americans or the African Americans or the Asian Americans to give birth to, to proliferate, if they are not to be in great numbers, you can stop in a lot of ways. Okay, eugenics is one, I should say, master craft that societies engage in, and too many. I do not want to enter into the politics of eugenics now. Okay, so reproductive technology or biotechnology, okay, they play a very important role in critical disability studies. Okay, there are a lot of things, implants and other things. Okay, and one more important thing is IoT. I think you might have heard of IoT, capital I, capital T, small letter O. IoT, Internet of Things. There are objects, and these objects are connected through sensors, and it all functions through the internet, and this can be connected to another device. This device can be connected to another device, and communication can be made without any human intervention. That is IoT. It's getting very popular nowadays. So of late, okay, maybe the past 5 or 6 years, IoT has become very popular. So through tones, through gestures, things can function. Like, I'm not talking about IoT, like there are a certain sensor machines, okay, technology that like what Stephen Hawking used, okay, as sensing technologies, mobility technologies, driverless cars, and all these things. So critical disability theory also advocates such things, but then there should always be a limit to things. And again, there is a question of power here. Who gets access to this technology? Okay, that's one important question. And then there's who produces such a technology, and to whom this technology is sold, or is it sold, or is it given free of cost? Okay, is there a subsidy, or is it free? Or is it given only to the first world countries, or is it given to developing countries, or also to third world countries? If it is given free of cost, no problem. If it is sold, like if it is at an affordable cost, okay, all these things. So a lot of questions. Critical disability theory has in its hands a lot of things to question and also to answer. And one thing, like media has also a very important role in dealing with critical disability studies. Okay, and time, please. It's 8:23. Okay, so media can also, now you get a lot of negative ideas about the physically disabled or the disabled persons, but media can contribute a lot by promoting positive values about disability. Okay, that is one important thing that people can go for. And so I would like to again finish with Foucault. So you need to be careful about power, because power functions through you. It's with you. It's within you. It pervades, our existence, and there is power everywhere. And there is positive power. Need not be always negative. Power can also be positive. So when it comes to resistance, I think the power becomes positive, and it is time for all the academicians. Okay, because scientists do different things, technologists do different things, and politicians definitely do different things. But as academicians, I think it's high time for us to understand what critical disability theory is, and how to march forward, how to go ahead and create our own dialogues, our own discourses on critical disability theory. There are a lot of disabled people or people with disabilities around. So we can study disability, and we can emerge, or we can evolve our own discourses in a successful way. So I would like to just share the screen, and I want you to just for maybe a minute or two. Is the screen visible?
It is visible, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. These models of disability. Okay, these are the prominent disability study studies, because normally in the question session, like you'll be asking about these things, like kindly take a screenshot or something, and like if you want to know about the nationality of these people, like most of them are Americans. Okay, and take down or take a screenshot, that would do. Prominent disability studies theorists, and these are famous people with disabilities. Van Gogh, a brilliant painter, Da Vinci, he had a disorder, Edison, Henry Ford. I'm sorry, that's mentally inconsistent. T is missing. Stephen Hawking, ALS, it's called amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. George Orwell, Jim Carrey, and Daniel Radcliffe, the hero of Harry Potter. And he cannot even tie his shoelace. It's very difficult for him. But then he has acted in these movies, 8 parts. I'm sorry, I don't remember the number of parts. Beethoven, Niall Horan, a famous musician, or the kids would love him. Isaac Newton, Mozart, Jane Austen, Justin Timberlake. The hero of Friends with Benefits, a very popular person. And again, disability in literature. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey, Beloved. Like I've given only
Excuse me, ma'am.
yes.
Slide is not moving. Like it is in another slide. You have to move forward.
Disability in literature is not visible, huh?
No, the slide is visible, but the names of the authors, like it is in the different slide. First terms, slide of terms are just being shown. Like,
What are you able to see now?
terms, intersectionality, ableism, body, mind.
Okay. Oh,
Terms.
sorry. Fine. I'll stop sharing. I'll share again. There should be some problem. It happens at times in. It's already getting late. Yes, are you able to see famous people with disabilities?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so these are these famous people. I've read the names to you just now: Van Gogh, Da Vinci, Edison, Ford, and all the other people, including Carl Jung, a famous psychiatrist who had schizophrenia. So, are you able to see this slide? Disability in literature.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, One
Yes,
Flew
ma'am.
Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey, Beloved by Toni Morrison, Bell Jar, Virgin Suicides, White Sargasso Sea, Fight Club, a very popular novel among the kids, Enduring Love, Tuesdays with Maury, my all-time favorite, Tuesdays with Maury. That's it. And disability in young adult fiction, because young adult fiction is a craze of the young readers nowadays. Talking so in all the bright places. Please don't miss reading this novel. All the bright places. And the Fault in Our Stars, another heart-rending novel. And when we collided 5 feet upon like all the bright places and Fault in the Stars, like it literally kills you when you read these things. Okay, that's it. So I used these two books. Okay, I had downloaded a lot of books, but I read only these two books for this presentation in particular. Maybe in future I'm planning to read all the other books. Okay, and you may ask, is there no activism in India? Because I was able to get two names, Anita Gai and Nandini Ghosh. There's also an Indian Journal of Critical Disability Studies. It was a kind of a revelation to me. I did not know that India had a journal on critical disability studies, and that's it. We have come to the end of the session. Just a minute. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. It's 8:27. Okay. But do we have a question answer session, or can we have it through mail? Because it's already time, and you also have this valedictory session. And my mail ID is push.steve@gmail.com, or you can even get it through the organizers. And maybe you can forward all your questions to my mail. I'll be really happy to answer all your mails. And I'm happy to be a part of this wonderful academic venture. My special word of thanks to Dr. Patricia, who has been a very inspiring source, a source of inspiration for all the staff members over there. I think, I can see, throughout the webinars, you have switched on your cameras, you are there, your presence, and especially Professor Angelin always with that angelic smile on her face. It's very, that's the kind of coordination that I find in the department. Well organized, well planned, and well executed, well administered. And so it all tells on the leadership of your head of the department. Thank you, ma'am, for this opportunity. And thank you, everybody. Thank you. I would like to thank the management, and special word of thanks to Professor Angelin. Professor Monica, thank you for trusting me and inviting me into this webinar. And Dr. Immaculate, a special word of thanks, and all those staff members out there, and faculty from outside, student participants, a big word of thanks to everybody. Thank you.
So, thank you, ma'am, for your rationalized and comprehensive talk on critical disability theory. So, it was indeed a thought-provoking session, and really it was bursting at the seams. So, as you have said, the participants can send your questions to her mail ID. Resource person's mail ID will be sent to your mails. So, we'll be getting the PPTs also. You can send the questions, and you can get the answers directly from her mail ID. So, the opinion means a lot at certain occasions. Dear participants, your opinions and suggestions matter a lot for us at this momentous occasion. I request the participants to give their feedbacks on our Golden Jubilee webinar series by unmuting the audio.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jayprabha, Assistant Professor of English, Sri Adishanjanagiri Women's College, Kabam. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for having conducted such a useful literary cornucopia. It was very well planned and organized. Timing was really perfect, and all the resource persons were experienced and knowledgeable professors, and they delivered wonderful speeches. I thoroughly enjoyed all the sessions, And I personally have learned so many literary terms, concepts, and new ways of teaching English, especially. And and I also got certificates for all the webinars, which is like really a bonus for me. And I hope all the other people also have felt the same. And thank you, ma'ams. Really, thank you all so much. Thank you.
A pleasant good evening to you all. I am Mrs. Bimal Yanamani and I'm working as assistant professor in Vyasa Arts and Science College for Women. And I am feel proud that I am the alumni of JAC. I felt that this Golden Jubilee webinar was very insightful and very informative for the past 3 weeks. And while concerning on ELT program that the topic experiential learning on alternative approach to teach literature in a training room was an eye opener. In this scenario, as we teachers were in dilemma how we need to impart ELT in literature class, and this program taught us how to concentrate on learning, reflective observation, and especially ma'am has yesterday she told that how we need to show literature class very effectively through these stages, through a song. By example, Taylor Swift's Exile song. And she has given many questions also how to make the class lively. And I feel happy to give this feedback. Thank you, ma'am. And I thank Department of English for organizing this wonderful seminar, and it helped me for my research also. Thank you. Thank you, Ananda.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ms. Sharon. I'm Ms. Sharon from the Department of English, Alpha Arts and Science College, Chennai. I'm very happy that I could participate in this series of webinars organized by our college, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my feedback on the session by Dr. Armstrong on indigenous literature. I'm not very familiar with this topic. In fact, let me first congratulate the entire team and express my appreciation to the Department of English for organizing the series of webinars on a host of different topics. Each of the topics were very useful, for people like us from the Department of English. It was a great learning experience. Thank you so much. It is also a good idea to have a series of webinars on alternative days. So I think I have greatly benefited from whatever sessions I have attended, especially this particular session by Dr. Armstrong on indigenous literature. As I said, I'm entirely new to this. I'm not very familiar with the concepts, but I was able to get a basic understanding of indigenous literature. I came to know about the key terms and the concepts related to it. So I have also developed a bit of interest in knowing more. So that is what the webinar or the lecture has done for me. In fact, I really, like the way the series has been organized. And in fact, in our own college, we were discussing in our department that we should be able to do something like this. So we'll be hoping to have more from you. All the very best, and thank you for your all the best for your Golden Jubilee year.
Hello, this is Elton D'Souza. I'm an assistant professor from Department of English from Don Bosco College of Agriculture, Goa. Personally, I have actually enjoyed this series of webinars because one is all the seminars were so different from regular seminars that come on RHINE. And recently, I had a faculty development program, FTP, and in comparison, not to compare it as such, but I felt that this series were much more better than a FDP, which I recently attended, because there is so much new that I actually learned here. And I really thank the organizers for not only organizing, a webinar series like this, but even to choosing the very important and relevant and innovative topics that were discussed here. And not just that, but even to get the best professors, best resource persons to actually talk about it is a work of genius. So I not only thank, but I appreciate the work of the organizers. And I kind of felt like, okay, this is like coming to an end, but I would be very happy if it is kind of continues, because there was kind of a habit that every almost alternate days I would be joining here. So even if your golden jubilee is not the next year, but then we would like to see something like this in the future. Thank you.
Good evening, one and all. Okay.
Good evening, all. I'm so blissful and feel blessed to share my feedback here. I'm Anika from SRNC College, Satu. Initially, I take a fun to attend this webinar to gain something new. Through this webinar series, A Literary Cornucopia, I received a plethora of things that what I have expected from various different divergent genres. I would like to tell a few lines which I felt from this overall webinar series. Before I touched the link of Cornucopia, I was sailing in my small literary canoe. Once I found the ship named Literary Gerontology, I was curious enough to know about it. I started my voyage with the ship. I was surprised to meet some of my indigenous friends. I became a spectator for a while to observing them what they were doing. Some discussed under the topic critiquing the canon. A few added their interest on Marxist concepts, their aesthetic sense of thoughts among the post-humanistic world. I felt I stood among the waveless ocean, and their recent trends on teaching and learning for their future generations inspires me. This e-webinar e-colonized me in front of my mobile for more than an hour by its powerful performance. It helps me to lift up my research thoughts, close out my disability notions on certain concepts, and guide me to reach the vast shore where I spend my special days, moments to further move. The level of expertise and outstanding presentation, willingness to explain the concepts and clarify our doubts are really helpful. I thank all the presenters, thank organizers, and thank you all. Thank you.
Good evening, one and all. This is Komla from Anai Velangani's College, Chennai. It is like a Navarasas. We had Navarasas at a single time from your college. I applaud everyone, every organizers for this creative idea of bringing out Navarasas in this web series, webinar series. So the first speaker, I think, I just wish to comment on each speaker. The first speaker about gerontology said you should celebrate your aging. So that's really awesome. We should celebrate our ages. When we get older and older, we wish to celebrate. And the second speaker of webinar series is Armstrong sir, head of the Department of University of Madras. So indigenous literature, he just went vast about indigenous literature. And third one, Dr. Joseph Durairat sir, critiquing the canon. He just elaborated on what is canon and how we should critique the text. And the next, Dr. Paul, again on political relevance in Marxist concept. It was widely read, and post-humanism, Sir had met, and I mean, he had gone into openly discussed everything about what is humanism, not only in literature but outside the world. And Dr. John Shaker sir's recent trends in English language and learning and teaching, I was really marveled. So this recent trends, he has elaborated on every recent trends that we have here. And I was also totally I mean, I don't have words to describe Dr. S. Melvin's concept of e-colonialism, how he went about electronic colonialism, and the other two speakers on experimental learning on alternative approaches for training room and disabilities theories was really awesome. I appreciate the organizers and other audiences who were attending it patiently. Thank you.
Good evening. I am Dr. Shamuna from Ayappa Government Arts College, Karekudi. Um, as Madam Komala did, I would also like to brief on whatever I have heard. I was fortunate enough to attend all the 9 sessions. And of course, the first session, the day one, it began with the celebration of old age by Dr. Samuel Rufus, and then the global indigenous literature by Dr. Armstrong, and of course, Dr. Joseph Devaraj. He laid the responsibility of critiquing the canon on the shoulders of the teachers, as he said that we have the power to break open the new stream of literature. And the fourth day, the Reverend Dr. Paul Prakash's lecture on socio-political relevance of select Marxist concepts and theories gave a very defined timeline of Marxism and communism, its principles and motives. And to be frank, this is the first lecture I have ever heard so elaborate on the concept of Marxism. And he also stressed on the need to be critical and analytical. And the essence of Dr. Paul Prakash's lecture was to produce a counter ideology. And of course, the next person, Dr. Arunlal Mukheri's Aesthetics of Humanism and Dr. Melvin's E-Colonialism, they laid the emphasis on the part virtual reality playing in our life. And of course, Dr. Melvin, he drove the point that digital colonialism has become inevitable. And as usual, Dr. J. John Saker, he nailed the point that English language is dynamic with the change of scenario and generation, and we have to update ourselves to meet the needs of the students. And of course, I would like to appreciate the faculty members of Jairaj Anabakim College for transiting the international limits to bring Dr. Vaughan Maslini's session. And of course, her concepts of concrete experience, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, and active experimentation, it took us to the various countries she had gathered her knowledge. And her lecture was, of course, a bouquet of various concepts gathered in the wide arena of various universities. And today's session, Dr. Kushit Begum, session by Dr. Kushit Begum on critical disability theory, has provoked the interest to ponder over the critical disability theory in detail. And to conclude with gratitude, I congratulate the Department of English, Jairaj Anabakim College for Women, for the painstaking effort to organize this series of webinar on virtual platform. And it should be acknowledged that each and every faculty member in the department has put in great effort to identify and employ the right resource persons to enlighten the participants. I would like to thank each and every teacher in the department for this very systematic and orderly endeavor. And to be concise and to sum up, the 9 webinars are the 9 gems to be studied in the crown of Jairaj Anabakim College for Women on this Golden Jubilee year. I very sincerely beseech the Almighty to pour down the showers of blessings on your institution for more such intellectual venture. Thank you.
Good evening, all. I'm Pramodi Somratna, lecturer probationary from University of Vocational Technology, Sri Lanka. So it was a very good opportunity for us to enhance our knowledge based on these informative as well as interesting topics. So I think I missed only 2 sessions. 2 or 3 sessions. So I expect to share all these videos with our colleagues, students, and all academics in Sri Lanka. And Ma'am Patricia and all the organizers, thank you very much for organizing this event. So we would like to participate your next webinar series as well. So please let us know once you have scheduled it, and definitely we will be a part of that. Right. Thank you very much.
Good evening, madam. This is Dr. Minakshi Kulkarni from Nagpur. Thank you so much, organizers, for organizing the amazing sessions. I missed the first two, but I'll ensure that I watch it on YouTube. It was very well planned, and I can understand how much painstaking efforts y'all must have put in, the organizers. Uh, it's really commendable. And so many concepts were clarified by the and really the new insights which were given, the new research opportunities were provided by all the resource persons. Really, hats off, commendable job to the organizers, and it was really a plethora of knowledge accumulation process. I'm really very happy to be a part of it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, dear participants, for your meaningful and valuable comments and suggestions which substantiates the success of the webinar series. Thank you all for your beautiful words and appreciative words. So feedback form link has been posted in the chat box and in the YouTube comments box, and you can get the certificates. So gratitude makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. Now I call upon Dr. J. Immaculate Rani, Organizing Secretary and Assistant Professor, Department of English, JAC, to propose vote of thanks.
A pleasant evening, all. I deem it a great honor to thank all on the final day of this webinar. My sincere thanks to Dr. Kushid Begum, Assistant Professor of English, St. Joseph's College, for examining the disability studies and reinforcing the significant concepts in a very clear way. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your virtual presence here. It's my duty to thank the management for their continuous encouragement and prayer. I am immensely thankful Dr. Patricia Alpha Nirmala, Head and Assistant Professor of English, for her skillful guidance, functional leadership, and technical initiatives throughout these webinars. Thank you so much, ma'am. This is the time to acknowledge the unstinted support of Mrs. Angeline Chorna, the coordinator of this Golden Jubilee webinar series. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your support throughout. I thank Mrs. Monica, the convener of this webinar, for her organization. I register my sincere thanks to all the resource persons of these 9 webinars for their dissemination of knowledge through panoramic views in spite of their personal inconveniences. I am pleased to thank all the conveners and organizing secretaries of the department. Of course, their relentless support in organizing as the feedback sharing that we received from various participants. It really meant a lot. And my sincere thanks to all the virtual participants from various institutions. Without their support, it would not be like appreciable and recognizable. It's only because of your virtual presence. And once again, I register my sincere thanks to all the participants throughout the webinar series to making the session so interactive just by posting your questions and making it so fruitful. Thank you so much, dear participants. And I also thank my students, our students from the Department of English for all their participation in the YouTube channel. Thank you one and all. Thank you all for making the session so informative as well as so in a very fruitful manner. Thank you so much all. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am, for your profound vote of thanks. Thank you all for being with us in the intellectual journey of Golden Jubilee celebrations. The event has reached its greater mark of excellence with your valuable presence. Thank you to all the speakers, the management, our HOD, the coordinator of this event, my dear colleagues and participants for the success of this webinar series. Hoping for the same kind of response from you all for the upcoming events. Let us be connected intellectually. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.